Welcome to the Vision for Life podcast, an ongoing conversation between the pastors of Fellowship Denver and the church at large. Each week we talk about life, faith, the Bible, and how to follow Jesus as we go about our daily lives. I'm Autumn, the host of the podcast, and Hunter's here with me today. Hunter, here we are.
We are here, Autumn. It's good to be with you.
We're going to see how this goes today. You often say that on our afternoon recording sessions, the energy is flagging a little.
That's right.
And that may be the case today. We'll have to see.
Well, I ate about 4 pieces of candy before we started, so I'm going to at least have some energy to begin, and then I'll probably crash, just like a little kid here in about 20 minutes. But our listeners don't know if we're recording in the morning or the afternoon, so it makes no difference to them. But today I said, as we were preparing, we had a couple different options for what we were going to discuss on today's show. And I said, Autumn, I just want to go wherever your energy is. And you were like, I have no energy. And so that's when I got 4 pieces of candy. And I also read what we're going to talk about. And then I got all fired up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you found a little bit of
energy. Found a little
I
energy. kind of had to activate some of my angsty energy.
Yeah. Some sugar, some angst.
Yes.
It's going to go well. Before we start talking about the topic at hand, I want to invite everyone listening to join our Spring Book Club. Those episodes, the beginning of our Spring Book Club is actually going to start very soon. We'll release the first of those episodes in a couple of weeks. And this spring, we are reading and discussing Knowing God by J.I. Packer. We've mentioned this a couple of times over the last several episodes, and we would love for you to grab a copy, read along with us as you're reading. If you have thoughts or questions that surface based on the reading, send them our way, and we will consider those as we're putting together the content. And we're going to organize these episodes a little bit differently. Often we discuss a book over the course of 2 to 4 episodes. This spring, because of the nature of this book, and because of the fact that this book actually lends itself a bit more to reading slowly, to thinking deeply as you're reading, to spending some time considering the content, we want to slow down the pace at which we are releasing the book club episodes. So our first 2 book club episodes will be based on part 1 of Knowing God. Then we'll take a short break, and then we'll discuss over the course of a few episodes part 2, take a short break, and then discuss part 3. So if you are interested in grabbing that book, we'll drop a link here, but you should also just be able to Google Knowing God by J.I. Packer, pick up a copy, and start reading with us. All right.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. And we are recording that in a couple of days.
We're starting to,
And I was reminded this morning that I need to get ready for that. So
that you need to do some refreshing.
Thanks for that reminder again. Yes, that's right.
Yes.
And if I do that, I'm going to have to cram it into my week, which means I'm not going to be able to follow the advice of this influencer we're going to talk about today.
We don't actually know if she's an influencer.
Okay.
She's attempting to be.
She has 318,000 Instagram followers.
Oh, well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention to that. So yeah, maybe she is.
Yeah.
She must be an influencer to certain people.
That's right.
She's influencing them. But I often say at the end of these podcast episodes to send us your thoughts, questions, suggestions, and that we will consider those as we're putting together the content. And that is how today's episode came about. One of our listeners sent me an Instagram post and said, hey, this might make for a good podcast discussion. Mm-hmm. And so we looked at it and discussed it, and here we are. We're going to record about it. But that, for those of you listening, in all seriousness, if that thought comes to mind as you're reading an article or a book or thinking about something, maybe one of our recent sermons, send your questions and thoughts to us, because we will read those, discuss them, and see if we can work them into a future episode.
Yeah. And I love discussing things that our listeners send in, because it gives me a window into like what people are reading, what they're thinking about, what they're really wrestling with. And that's super valuable to me just as a pastor. So thank you guys for sending this in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So to today's episode, we're going to discuss this Instagram post by, as you said, an influencer who is on Instagram as Well.Guide.
Well.Guide. Her name is Isra Nasir. Mm-hmm. So she has a real name. But her name is Well.Guide, or that's her handle, her Instagram handle. And I'm just going to read the post. How about that? There's a lot of text here, and And so let me just read it. It'll give you a sense of what she's talking about. The soft life, this is the big idea, the soft life is often framed as a personal choice, but in reality, it is deeply tied to hidden privileges that not everyone has equal access to. Financial security plays a major role in determining whether someone can embrace a softer life. The ability to say no to hustle culture, take time off, or prioritize well-being often depends on having savings, generational wealth, or a stable income. Without financial safety, rest can feel like a risk rather than a right. Social and family support provide an invisible cushion that allows people to lean into ease. Yet, for many, systemic inequities and cultural expectations mean they must navigate life alone, making rest and leisure much harder to attain. Beyond external resources, physical and emotional health is another often overlooked privilege that impacts access to a soft life. Chronic illness, mental health struggles, or caregiving responsibilities can make ease feel unattainable. When society only centers wellness around those who are already able-bodied, financially stable, and emotionally supported, it reinforces the idea that softness is a luxury rather than a necessity. But while systemic change is necessary, small shifts can still help us bring softness into our daily lives. Choosing rest without guilt, setting gentle boundaries, leaning on friends, and offering support in return, or simply allowing slowness where we can. Softness is not just a privilege, it is also a practice. Instead of just saying, everyone can live a soft life, let's ask, how can we make softness accessible for every life? And then she goes on to say she's going to share some more ideas in future posts. Okay, I read that and I was like, I need to go take a shower now because I just want to wash this off. But then I was like, what's the term? I have like an aversion to this kind of therapeutic talk that just gives me a twitch. But anyway, then I was like, okay, what's the soft life? This is a term apparently. So I asked the Googles. I went to the Google machine and I asked what the soft life is, and I got an answer from AI. I got an AI overview. A soft life is a trending lifestyle movement popularized on social media focused on rejecting hustle culture by prioritizing ease, comfort, intentionality, and self-care over constant struggle and stress, emphasizing boundaries, emotional safety, and finding joy in simple, luxurious feeling moments, whether opulent or budget-friendly. So that's the soft life.
Did that help you understand the post?
It did. And in fact, she referenced some of those things. And so I felt like I was coming in on a conversation that was already going, and people knew it was being talked about. I was like, I think I'm picking up. It's similar, I think. My read is it's similar to what you would call self-care. Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of a wellness mindset. Okay. You have I think, figured out even more what she's getting at. So why don't you summarize? Because one of the conversations we had is like, what is she actually saying?
Yeah, what's her point?
Which when we read something, that's the question we want to start from is like, mm-hmm. What is the author trying to say? Mm-hmm. And in this case, I wasn't really clear. So there was a lot going on, and as I've already alluded to, I was just kind of angsty and reactive. so you can't often understand what someone is saying when you're in that space. So
it's true.
So I was like, Autumn, help me understand this, and you did. You're going to summarize it now with a few bullet points.
Yeah, I also will explain for those of you listening, since you're not looking at this post, even though we can link to it in the show notes, but. The way that the post is constructed is what Hunter just read, what you just read, H, is the explanation. So what you would see as the whole explanation. In the post itself, so where a picture would be if you're imagining Instagram or some text, she calls out a number of privileges. So the heading over this whole message is the hidden privilege in the soft life no one wants to talk about.
Oh, but
and I said, haha, we want to talk about it. So we're doing that today. And then she calls out a number of privileges. So privilege number 1 is financial safety nets. And then there are sub-points under that. For instance, growing up with financial stability, parents or family who can support you in tough times, not living paycheck to paycheck, and not having debt that you carry over. Privilege number 2 is social and family support. And under that, her subpoints are parents who provide financial or emotional support into adulthood, a partner who covers expenses, or a dual income household, friends or connections that provide career safety nets. And then privilege number 3 is physical and emotional health, access to therapy, healthcare, and wellness resources, not having to work multiple jobs just to survive, not dealing with chronic illness, high stress, or caretaking responsibilities. So in bullet point fashion, that's what she's calling out as the privileges that she's referring to in the explanation that Hunter read earlier. So to Hunter's question about what is she saying, my summary, as I asked the same question of this post, would be something like this. So I think point number 1 is the soft life is good. It's something to be desired or pursued. Point number 2, the soft life is out of reach for people who lack these privileges that she named in the post. Point number 3 is these privileges that she names are what often allow people access to the soft life. And then her last main point in her explanation is how can we make the soft life available to more people in some fashion, especially those who lack these privileges or who lack a certain personal level of choice, is the way she's stating it. So that's how I would understand it. And then there's another point in there that I think is not one of her main points, but it comes out in the explanation that you read, Hunter, and that seems to be that ease or rest are an end. So as we continue to talk about the post and interact with it from a biblical perspective, to ask how we can understand this particular post from that perspective, the conception of rest within biblical terms is a bit different than the way she's portraying it. So she's portraying ease or rest as an end, something to be pursued in and of themselves, something that will give your life more fullness. So that's how I understand the main points.
Yeah, thanks.
Was that helpful?
Thanks for that summary. That is helpful. And the point I'm taking away is the soft life, which I read that term and I think I don't want to live a soft life. I want to be tough. That's what I think. I want to be tough. I don't want to be soft. And but that's to be desired, apparently. So it's kind of like living a life where you're surrounded by pillows and cushions, and you're buffered from all the hard stuff of life. And apparently,
in a sense, I mean,
that is to be desired. You prioritize that over
gentle boundaries. That's what's the term boundaries. She used. Yeah.
Emotional safety, finding joy in simple, luxurious feeling moments. I do like simple, luxurious feeling moments. Like eating a steak or slipping into a cashmere hoodie after dinner, So yeah.
Well,
I guess I'm living the soft life now that you mentioned it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think even though your initial reaction was an image of pillows and the fact that you don't want a soft life, I think maybe
I have flannel sheets
within the terms she's setting out here that things like taking a fishing trip, while not particularly restful in the sense of relaxing on pillows with some foot cream. It is a choice about an activity that you want to pursue and a way you use your money to allow you to have certain leisure time.
That's right. Yeah. And so I do have this. Well, I thought it would be fun to kind of get some of my angsty reactions out because some of our listeners might have some of the similar ones, especially the men. I just speak for the men. This a lot of the wellness and self-care talk that is led by women is just not only not interesting to me, but like gives me the heebie-jeebies, Mm-hmm. So I have to be careful that I don't sometimes that I don't stomp on all of that, but. Because
that you seek to understand and not just react.
I seek to understand and not just react. Because here's the reality. You can't lead men with this vision. You can. Men are motivated. We are motivated by doing hard things with our lives, by giving ourselves to something good and noble that requires some kind of suffering. I'm all about the hustle. I'm all about embracing the grind. So like even my motivation for having some leisure time is like I push myself really hard, so I have to like build in time to take a little time off. But I don't think it's quite coming from the same place that this is coming from, where you said it well a minute ago. That's the end. Whereas I think for me, it's more like something to support me in the ongoing, hard things the Lord has called me to do. So anyway, I don't want to lead men with this vision at all. I want to call men to sacrifice and to give themselves to something good and something noble, and to do hard things and to be stretched and to be tough. And I think men respond to that. I don't want my football team reading this, and your football team reads this, and you've got Pete Carroll coaching you. Next thing you know, and then he's fired. So that's okay. Those are some of my angsty reactions.
Yeah. How do you immediately react to the notion that like certain leisure activities or means of rest, whether or not you agree with the way those means are portrayed, like in this post or in perhaps the Soft Life Instagram, of which I am very unfamiliar. So I can't really speak knowledgeably to that. My Instagram is filled with friends, fail videos, and gardening stuff.
Yeah.
Farming.
So there you go.
So I'm not attuned to the Soft Life discussions. But how do you react to her point that some of those activities that do lend a fullness to life or provide some respite against some of the difficulties of life are just less available to certain people because of what she's identifying as privilege?
Yeah. Well, a biblical worldview would tell me that not all people have the same station in life. And there are some basic creation order goods that I think make life both enjoyable and sustainable. And not all people have those in equal measure and access, and for various reasons. And so we do need to commend and not poo-poo the good creation order, things that God has given us for enjoyment and to sustain life. So I do see some overlap there, and maybe we can get into that. I'll give one more pastoral pushback. So let me just get my pushbacks out, okay?
Yeah, all the angst before the sugar crash.
That's right. I think an overemphasis on wellness and self-care makes it hard for people to deal with the inevitable difficulties of life. So there's two ways of thinking about normal creation order enjoyments. So think of like a nice meal or a warm shower or a spa day. These are just creation order comforts. Or think about getting out on your bike or going skiing, whatever helps you unwind and relax and you just enjoy it. Okay. A glass of wine. There's two ways to think about those. One is what you said earlier. The goal of life is to enjoy those things. And I need to really move those up the priority list. Another way, which I think follows more of the creation order, is those things are rest from our work. Work is normal. It's the normative thing we're called to do. And then these are rest from work. And then when we work from a place of taking normal rest, our work is more productive. So it doesn't put these things in competition with each other, but it rather gets them rightly ordered. And my concern with kind of a lot of the self-care and wellness movement is that it's disordered. I don't think that's everyone's intention in engaging this. So that's why I want to engage this conversationally with individual people, because I think some people are drawn to self-care because they're very driven, they work very hard, and they need to learn how to take a little time off and how to rest and recharge. But I think that quickly turns into over-desiring those things. And so we need to guard against that as well. I just don't hear that caution in the self-care movement. I hear all the caution is toward the hustle and the grind and the overwork. But there's not often the acknowledgement that like we can get too high centered on just caring for ourselves. And I think when that enters the picture, then it becomes harder and harder for us to actually deal with the stresses of life.
I think I'm taking your point. I hear you saying that one of your pastoral concerns is that actually putting into practice these principles or holding to this viewpoint, if you were adhering to this kind of worldview or view on reality and exercising some of these principles, while they may even be well-intentioned, they can actually make you weaker in a sense, might make someone weaker. And that's one of your concerns. How would you see that playing out in life? What's an example of a way that you could actually see that happening?
Yeah. One of the emphasis of the soft life is on setting boundaries, and it emphasizes the need to set boundaries. And I can, in one hand, appreciate that. Like, I have to set some boundaries around, like, when I'm going to be on email, answering stuff. Otherwise, I'm just online all the time, and anyone can interrupt me at any time, and that prevents me from resting or even just doing important work, right? Okay, so there's value in boundaries. And yet, I noticed a few years ago when this boundary language became popular in Christianity, and by the way, this is kind of what happens in evangelical subculture, is certain things start to get emphasized, and in their initial emphasis, they are probably a correction to, maybe an overemphasis in a different direction. And yet gradually over time, they become the thing that becomes overemphasized. And I've watched that unfold with self-care and with boundaries. When it was first started being talked about, no one was talking about self-care and boundaries. So it kind of became a needed emphasis to say, hey, life with God and working in God's kingdom is not just about work, but God also invites us to rest, to be replenished. It's not just about killing yourself always for the sake of others. If you don't set some boundaries, then there will be nothing left of you at the end of the day. It was kind of a needed corrective, right? Then I watched and observed over time that people started throwing up the boundary flag to keep them from just doing something that I would say is a necessary hard adult thing to do. So I watched some people throw up boundary flags around their difficult relationship with their parents. And they said, I've got to create some boundaries because this is a hard relationship. And what they meant by creating some boundaries is I just don't talk to my parents anymore, or I talk to them very rarely, very minimally. And I actually think it would have been better for them to have kind of been uncomfortable for a season, worked through the real emotional discomfort and conflict that was there, and figured out what an appropriate attached relationship to parents on the other side of working through all that difficulty, would be. But instead, they read a book on boundaries, and they just decided they used boundaries as a reason to kind of cut off, really. And that actually short-circuited their own growth. And so then that carries over into other things as well. If you don't develop an ability to work through hard things with your parents, then you might not be able to work through hard things with your spouse or with your friends. And so it actually diminished them. It gave them less resilience and less capacity. That's kind of my concern with what I understand the soft life movement to be. I'm a little bit afraid that in the wrong hands and with the wrong emphasis, it could make people soft. And I mean that in the literal sense of like, don't have the toughness that's needed to deal with the inevitable sufferings and hard things of life.
That is a good example. That helps me envision more of what you were saying a moment ago. Let's go back to the post for a moment. And you had alluded to this already, Hunter, but there is some overlap here between what the poster, the well.guide, is saying about good things in life, just things that give us stability and an ability to do what you're saying, to work and to still have rest, it would probably be called some sort of balance. I'm guessing within the terms of the post or the soft life terminology. But in recognizing those realities that are present in some lives and absent in others, she is putting her finger on some creation order goods, as you said earlier. For instance, one that she identifies in that first slide is about financial stability. And that's something that within wisdom literature, in scripture, we're given actual advice on how to order our affairs wisely so that we can provide for those in our household and then extend that to others. So desiring financial stability is not bad, and it actually is even a creation order good. And I think there are a few of those in the post. So help us think through that aspect of like where this post overlaps with some biblical reality.
Yeah. Well, just think of like a practical example of what this might look like. She mentions like not living paycheck to paycheck. So if you're not living paycheck to paycheck, that means let's just say that means you've got $1,000 of cushion in your monthly budget, right? With that $1,000 of cushion, you can go and do something that's enjoyable to you. You can go out to a nice meal with friends, or you can take an overnight trip somewhere and get away for the weekend, right? Okay, so this is an example, I think, of the soft life in practice. It's like going to prioritize, doing those things, and she's just noticing like if you don't have any financial cushion, you can't do some of that stuff, right? And I think she's actually acknowledging a weakness of this whole viewpoint, which is like it takes some affluence and some margin to do it. And even one of the things I want to watch as a pastor is that I'm not prescribing remedies for people that are not attainable to all people. They're not humanly attainable, right? They're only for certain people who have certain status or means, So I want to be careful about that I'm not saying this is the Christian life, and the Christian life looks like I need more money than I have, right? So I'm sensitive to this concern that she's raising, and I think she's naming some things that we could say are creation order goods. They like rest is God wove it into the fabric of creation and when He created the Sabbath. So rest is a creation order good. He wove it in the fabric of the day when He made the night for us to sleep, and we need sleep, and so I think it's one way we can read this in a helpful sense is to go, what are just the creation order things that she's naming, and then she's actually inviting us to go, what might be a way to do those that don't require a lot of means or a lot of money. So if rest is the creation order good, you can rest without having $1,000 weekend getaway to the Broadmoor, and so I think that's helpful, and we need to sometimes think about how to do that or do creation order goods in a way that doesn't require a lot of extra time and stuff.
Another one of the just creation order goods that is in the post is parents or family who can support you in tough times.
Yeah.
That's one of the points that she makes in there. This is another way that God created the world to work. So according to God's wisdom, children are placed in families, and those parents and families guide them and support them as they're growing up and help them launch, but can continue to be a supportive presence in their lives. So she's acknowledging this is something that is very helpful to have in a life. And biblically, we would affirm that. We would say, yes, parents or family who are supportive of you, that's a good thing.
That's right. And that then, raises the question of like, in the body of Christ, how can we help each other enjoy and not just enjoy, but have some of these basic creation order goods that allow us to give ourselves fully to God and to work for the long term, in His creation. And I think this does inspire me to go, how can the body of Christ create the infrastructure for people to do this in a way that doesn't require them having lots of means to pay for it themselves?
That's an interesting contrast that you're bringing up between the post and the suggestion of how we find these things or how we attain these good things in life, and biblically where you're going with it and saying, I wonder where we can help people who actually desire those things. And we would say also, in agreement with her post, that many people, what she calls privilege, is that often people experience these good things, financial stability, a family, through no choice of their own. They're born into a two-parent household, and their parents have worked hard to create a home for them. And what she's calling a privilege, we're saying, is a good thing that follows from people who are living according to God's wisdom. And so she's suggesting that we pursue those things according to these principles of the soft life. And so how we can attain these good things or find perhaps ways to experience the benefits of the soft life that don't require a lot of means, as you're saying. So to make it accessible to more people. Mm-hmm. And you're going a different direction with that question. So I think the poster fails to see that even if you don't have some of these things, you can still experience a good life. And you're starting to say, yeah, you can via the Christian vision for life, right, which is different.
That's right. And the term privilege is tricky because I think it tracks closely with a Christian category that I'll name in just a minute, but it doesn't track exactly. So let's just think of the example of I grew up in a family with two parents. My parents have a stable marriage, and I grew up in a family with a stable marriage, and let's say it was a financially stable family. Okay, this worldview would say that's privilege. And what they're naming is not everyone grows up in a two-parent family that's financially stable. That's a privilege. It's something that not everyone has the same access to. Okay, that's accurate. But I think the term privilege then puts a little guilt on you for that. And it basically says, now what are you you better check your privilege, or what are you going to do to steward that privilege, might be a more spiritual way to say it. But it puts a little guilt on people. And I don't see the Bible doing that. I don't see the Bible putting guilt on us for the good things in God's creation that we enjoy just because, say, our parents were wise. And I think, if you could dig into their marriage, you would probably say they had to navigate a lot of stuff to have this good, stable marriage, right? And someone had to work hard to provide the good, stable income and home. So I don't think the Bible loads a lot of guilt onto people for that. I do think there is a biblical category called righteousness, and the biblical category of righteousness says righteousness is a relational term. It means to be in right relationship with others. It says, how can I use what God has given me in order not just to benefit me, but to build up others around me and build up the community around me? And I do think righteousness is just stewardship of the measure of creation good and blessing, that God has given you. But righteousness doesn't motivate us from guilt. It motivates us from gratitude. It motivates us by saying, hey, honor the Lord, and a desire to honor Him for the good things you've been given. And that sense of I want to honor the Lord because He's given me this is a much different motivation than I feel really guilty because I have more than someone else does. And I find that a lot of the privilege talk goes more in the guilt talk, in the guilt direction than the honoring God direction, and I actually find that it's coming usually from people who don't even talk about God at all, that they have a purely secular worldview. So I'm a little bit averse to this privilege talk. I'm not super eager to see it introduced into the life of the church. I would much rather just talk about living righteously in a way that honors God and brings honor to His name.
Mm. There are 2 points I want to draw out of what you were just saying and kind of conclusion of those thoughts, to draw those thoughts together. One is that the wellness movement, the perspective from which the poster is speaking, tends to take creation order goods and try to make them available or accessible without God. So it makes them an end in themselves and creates its own vision of what the good life is. And what you were just saying, Hunter, is that it has its own motivations. One might be to attain that kind of life, and one might actually be the opposite, but out of a sort of sense of guilt.
Yeah, to assuage my sense of guilt.
Yes.
Yes. Well, and I think there's a parallel secular motivation or non-Christian motivation, which is pride. And I can think of and this is actually often true in people that have worked their way up from not having privilege to now being sustainable. Like I have a friend who this is his story. He had none of the privileges that are described here, and in fact suffered a lot that would just be brokenness and injustice because of the family and the parents he was born with. And he has now developed himself into a place, I think with God's help, he has developed into a place where he now makes a good, stable earns a good, stable living, and he has a great job, and he has more than enough. He could afford this off life, I guess, if he wanted to. What he wrestles with from time to time is a sense of like, man, I nobody gave me nothing. Nobody helped me at all. I didn't get anything from my parents. So I don't want to hear about how hard your life is. He could struggle with that. And so we talk a lot about, this is why I love Christianity, because Christianity can speak to the person who grew up in privilege, as she would say, and Christianity can speak to him the same way. And it says, hey, privilege or non-privilege is not the main thing. Did you work your way up there, or did you have generational wealth? Those are not the ultimate questions. The ultimate question is this: how are you going to honor God with your life, and how are you going to honor God for what He has done, His grace and His mercy in your life, and how are you going to honor God with your work and with your wealth? And so it asks the same question of both types of people, and I think it just provides it's more egalitarian. It provides the same foundation, the same worldview for all of us. It says the same. We are not so different according to socioeconomic status or how much income we have or don't have, and so I think it does a better job of what she's trying to do, which is she's basically saying, hey, I've been writing to privileged, wealthier women, and now I need to turn around and think about how my message might sound to people who don't have that. And she doesn't have much to say other than like, we just need to find ways to make this off life accessible to all people, And I think the message of all people need to ask, how should I honor God, and what does it look like to honor God in my life? I just think that's a better question.
What the post is identifying as privilege, which you explained a moment ago, is not quite the same in biblical terms, but is easy, though, for us to imagine. Perhaps some of the things she's describing are true in our lives. So that's certainly true of people probably who are listening or who are in our church, that the way that God orchestrated their lives, so God's good ordained will for them, is that they were born into a financially stable home, or that they are in a stable marriage, have a good relationship, and have financial stability, whether it's a two-income earner household or not, but that they have a level of stability in their lives that initially probably was not because of their choice. It was because of good choices other people have made. But if they have pursued the way of wisdom and lived according to God's principles, then this is the reality of their lives right now. And so you were saying, instead of actually being motivated by guilt, we should be motivated, if that is true of us, by gratitude. And actually, in the words of Jesus, it goes even a little farther. It's sort of like, whatever you have, be willing to share with others. In the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, when Jesus says not to retaliate, you've heard that it's been said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And then he says, that's not the way of my kingdom. And actually, even more than that, if you're compelled to go a mile, go two. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, give them your cloak as well. And if anyone begs from you, don't refuse them, and don't refuse the one who would borrow from you. So there is a principle at work in God's kingdom that both we should be motivated by gratitude, that we should be willing to share what we have. And so if we are in this category, whether we call it privilege or not, I think then we should ask, how do we honor God, as you're saying? How do we honor God with those good gifts that we have? And I can think of so many people in our church family who do this, who live this way, who acknowledge that what they have ultimately is a gift from God, and that all of those things, their resources of their finances, their time, their families, their homes, that they are motivated by gratitude and do ask, how can I honor God with these things? And they willingly share those things.
And often that is stretching for them. I've watched families and I've watched individuals stretch themselves to help other people and to welcome other people into their lives when those people are in need. And I would just say, man, they are stretched. They are stretched. If they are high-centered on the kind of life that we're talking about here, that they would never have even been able to stretch to do that. So they're willing to let God grow their capacity. Now, I also notice that the people who do that consistently and over time, like let's just think of, a family that welcomes a foster child into their life. That's a huge stretch. It's a huge disruption. They may be able to, in need to enjoy some of the creation order goods that we've named. They are not going to be able to, by doing that, live out the soft life, vision that she's described here. They just are not going to have enough time margin to do that, right? I have noticed though that God has a way of growing their capacity, as they step into things that are really, really hard. And then with them, I want to say, like, let's enjoy, let's help you figure out how you can enjoy a weekend away if you need to enjoy a weekend away, but it's not really coming from a place of motivated by the soft life. It's coming from a place more of like, how do you get the appropriate rest that you need as just a human being with limits, and how do you get the appropriate rest that you need in order to do more of what you're already doing, which is just honoring God with your life. So I appreciate that, and I think there's some wisdom here for those folks.
In the terms of the post and the soft life discussion, those who lack privilege in this conception, there's a biblical category for them too. I think that the Bible often talks about that reality in terms of need. And there are certainly needs that all of us have, whether we sit in, again, according to the terms of the post, a privileged position, or a position in which through choices that were made by others or circumstances, we have a lack of privilege. But the beauty of the body of Christ and what you're describing is that within the body of Christ, those who have an abundance in some way are called to share it. And those who have need or lack in some way can come to the body of Christ, and within the vision that God gives us for the way that his family is supposed to work, then those needs should be met. So to the people who sit in this position, what the post calls privilege, and you're saying should be, we should ask then, how do we honor God? And how are we motivated by gratitude, by what God has given us? Then look around and see who is in need in our church family or in your community, and ask if what you have can meet that need. And again, you acknowledged a moment ago, Hunter, we know that even within that, there are limits. But when an entire body of Christ comes together to do that and develops that mindset, cultivates that mindset, then the picture given to us of the early church in Acts, in which it said all had enough, can actually come to be. And so I think that is the thought that I'd like to land our episode on today.
Yeah, that's right. And as you were talking, I was thinking of 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, where Paul is coaching the Corinthians and about giving, and he says, I do not mean that others should be eased and you burdened, but that as a matter of fairness, or another word, their way to translate that would be justice. As a matter of fairness, your abundance at the present time should supply their needs, so that their abundance may supply your need. There may be fairness, and there is this sense of like God has given different parts of the body different amounts, and rather than just using that for ourselves, we're to use it to build up the whole body. That's called righteousness or justice, and that's a good vision, and it honors God.
Well, Hunter, thank you. Thanks for, eating some candy, powering through this discussion.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this post to our attention and stewarding a conversation that included my angsty reactions.
And to the listener who sent in the suggestion, thank you. And to those of you listening, we love hearing from you. So if you have questions, whether about today's post or just about anything that's on your mind, or suggestions about what you'd like to hear us discuss on the podcast in the future, you can send all of that anytime to podcast@fellowshipdenver.org. Thanks for joining us on the Vision for Life podcast. Special thanks to Adam Englund for our theme music, to Jesse Cowan, our producer, and to Judd Connell, who provides transcription for these episodes.